Okay, thanks for clicking in and welcome to the waterfront portion of your tour as we head into Citrus Isles. So the Citrus Isles are located just east of 95, super close to downtown Fort Lauderdale, and all deep water. Look at that one. That's beautiful, that, huh? How about this one behind me? So the Citrus Isles were created, deep waterfront property created by the Army Corps of Engineers after World War II. And a lot of the homes originally on Citrus Isles were probably soldier housing. Okay, so let's walk the streets here a little bit in Citrus Isles. We're on Avocado Isle right now. I know, it's not a citrus. I think they named it Citrus Isles because the very first one off of Davie Boulevard, the first aisle that you hit is called Citrus Isles. And then they go down from there. Mango, avocado, mandarin, tangelo, guava, just to name a few. Anyway, so you can see where the streets are nice and wide. It's fabulous. And you can see the diversity of the architectural styles. And it's really a huge indicator of how it's popping over here now. Why? Because it's deep water, ocean access. You're to the ocean in less than an hour. And it's super affordable. As you get closer to the ocean, you just add millions. So over here, like a teardown lot or a teardown house is running these days from 800 to $1 million just for the teardown. 2 years ago, you could get one for 500 to 800,000. Now they're pushing the $1 million mark to give you your little footprint. So here's one now that somebody tore down, and the contractor's getting ready to build something fabulous. Here is sort of an original. This one's, a lot of them here, this is the typical style of the original homes. A lot of them had carports, and some of them had these one-car garages. So this is the typical layout, though, of the original construction type on Citrus Isles. Or in the Citrus Isles, I should say. So yeah, these guys are original. That's the cul-de-sac down there at the end, where those are going to be riverfront properties. Nice, bigger premium there. Here's a renovated original house in great condition, single story. You know, you make the choice as to whether you want to come in and renovate one of the originals beautifully, like so many have done, or if you want to tear it down and build something new. Beautiful. Let me give you a little shot on that. Lovely home. 2-car garage, nice high impact ceiling, windows, and doors. That one's probably going to be around the $4 or $5 million mark. If you have any questions, just hit me up in the comments and ask me to look up the new construction properties on Citrus Isles. I'm happy to do so. It's just today I decided to get out on the boat, get out in the yard without doing any research. So you want me to research it, hit me up in the comments, text me, email me, call me. I'm happy to do it. Now this one across the street here is a renovated original. So there you go. Single story they all were. Here's another one going up. I'll zoom in on the sign for you so that you can see what the price is. That one there in the distance there on Avocado, I sold that one 2023 for just under $2 million. That one's gorgeous inside with marble floors, wood floors upstairs, 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath. This one here was old George's house. Tore it down. Building something. This one here is Joe's house. Here he passed away, so that one may be coming up soon. Call me if you're interested. Here's another typical original, built in the 60s. So you had a little carport, you got a little storage over there next to the truck. You got your old awning windows. And just the street is fabulous. It's really, there are very few streets this wide in the city of Fort Lauderdale. Like I said earlier, I mean, I think these streets are as wide as the canals. It's a chill little neighborhood vibe over here. And you can have a camper, you can have a boat in the yard. You don't have all the rules that you do in some other areas of the city of Fort Lauderdale and other cities. So there you go. This is indicative of what's going on Citrus Isles. From fabulous construction in the early 2000s to the originals, to the teardowns, to the renovations, and to the big mansions. All right, well, welcome to the land tour of Citrus Isles. The thing that's pretty cool about Citrus Isles is that the streets are super wide. I think the streets are almost as wide as the canals. So Citrus Isles, a little history, is post-World War II. There was a guy by the name of, his last name was Rhodes, R-H-O-D-E-S. He developed Citrus Isles. He bought this piece of dirt right adjacent to Croissant Park. And rather than just building a neighborhood, lovely, like Croissant Park, he had the Army Corps of Engineers dredge canals so that every single house is on the water. Deep water, no fixed bridges to the ocean. He built some house, the end aisles, like Citrus and I think Mandarin, the two canals at the very end that abound the boundary line of Citrus Isles. Those have duplexes. But other than that, single family homes. We're talking in the 50s and 60s. And now you can see how people are renovating. Now we have diverse, there's a nice renovated house from probably the 50s or the 60s. There's another one. Lovely, lovely. And you'll see later on in the video that a lot of these houses are lately, since it's been discovered, deep water, lately they're just knocking them down rather than renovating them and building sugar cube mansions or other two-story fabulous homes. So that'll conclude our tour of Tangelo Isle. Let's go look at a few more. And now we're driving down Mandarin Isle. And as you can see, there's a little travel trailer right there that we just passed by. So that's the other fabulous thing about Citrus, the wide streets, the waterfront. And you can have trailers and RVs and all the toys here without the city getting on your butt. Now right here on the right is an example of one of the newer homes that's been built. So this is the trend. This is what's trending now on Citrus Isles. Doesn't have to be for you, but you see the height restrictions are pretty liberal, 2 stories. Or there's one that's renovated, lovely. Look at that sailboat mast back there. 2-car garage, renovated house. Here's one in the process of getting renovated. How do we know? Well, it's the dumpster, of course. So they're gutting that. And they're probably going to renovate that one rather than tear it down. If they were tearing it down, there'd be a crane there as opposed to a dumpster. Now this one here on the left is a beauty. Another indicator of the trend of construction going on Citrus Isles. What's that on the on the hood of my truck? That's probably iguana poop. Those are your neighbors. If you live on the water in Fort Lauderdale, you must coexist with iguanas. And here's one right now. Looks like, I'm not sure if it was a tear down and new construction or if they left the wall up, but that one's under construction. Looks like it's going to be a beauty. And now we're down at the end, the cul-de-sac. So at the end of each of these aisles, when we come off of 9th Avenue and go to the end, these are all the cul-de-sacs, and all of these houses have a little piece of water, a little piece of the new river in their backyard. So that's the boundary lines are 9th Avenue and the new river. Now let's go down one of the aisles and look a little bit more. Now this little house here is probably in the 90s, maybe even the 80s, where they took an original 1950s or 60s house when this was built, and they just added the whole section there with 2-car garage, because it probably originally had a carport, and then some bedrooms on the top floor. So there's one example of how the homes have been modified over the years. So here we are in a lovely little park. I found some shade right next to and at the end of the Citrus Isles. So right over there is 9th Avenue. Right over here behind me, there's like playgrounds and gazebos, so you can take the kids over to do the playground stuff or picnic in the gazebos. It's a lovely park. So I stopped at this park for an opportunity to give you a little history of the Citrus Isles. So right over there on the other side of 9th Avenue is what's known as Croissant Park. I did another video on Croissant Park. It's a beautiful little neighborhood established like in the early 30s, late 20s, and it just kept building to today. Citrus Isles was a big piece of land on this east-west side of 9th Avenue that this guy named Charles Rhodes came and bought. And rather than doing the plat layout and building a community similar to Croissant Park and River Oaks and Yellowstone, neighborhoods that he decided to, probably connections with the Army Corps of Engineers, he dredged out canals. So instead of having just a whole bunch of houses laid out in dry lots, he sacrificed some of that land and some of those houses, of course, by dredging canals. The beauty of it is every single house in the Citrus. The beauty is that every single house in Citrus Isles is waterfront property, deep waterfront property, meaning you can get to the ocean without any fixed bridges and in under an hour. So Rhodes started the development in the 50s. He started building some houses in the 50s and then the 60s and maybe a few in the 70s, but most of the houses were built on Citrus Isles in the 50s and the 60s. And then it just kind of stayed that way. There's a lot of sailors, chill neighborhood, which it still is. And we really haven't seen much going on until maybe starting again in the 2000s, and now it's just off the chain in Citrus Isles. They're tearing down those old houses and building sugar cube mansions or new construction that kind of resemble New England architecture. The architecture is quite diverse now. In the 70s and 80s, it was more renovating the houses built in the 50s and 60s. So they were post-World War II concrete block construction homes with a carport, and they evolved over time into people closing in the carport and either adding another bedroom or adding a 1- and 2-car garage. Now, different story. Most of them, some people are still doing that, but most of them are tearing the roofs off, adding a second floor, or adding to the back, or just tearing the whole house down and building huge houses, 1- or 2-story, depending upon what they want. speculators coming in, they're building the 2-story houses. The end users that are buying, tearing down, and rebuilding are building to suit. So whether that's 1 or 2 stories, it doesn't matter. Anyway, that's how Citrus Isles came to be. It still has this great small neighborhood vibe, and you are about 5 minutes, less than a mile, to downtown Fort Lauderdale. So you can be over here, living on the water, have your boat in your backyard, take your boat downtown to the restaurants, or just drive downtown to the restaurants and clubs and have that urban vibe. So now, for this segment, I want to take you into the pros and cons of living on Citrus Isles. The number one pro and the number one reason why people are moving here to Citrus Isles is the deep water. You can have your boat in your backyard. Doesn't matter how tall your sailboat mast is, doesn't matter how high your fish tower is or your tuna tower, you've got the boat in the backyard. Of course, the largest boat that you should probably have in your backyard is about 50 feet, because that's about all that the canals can take. Don't forget, you got to spin around when you're docking or leaving the dock. So the canals are generally, I think, 75 feet wide, as are the streets. So just be mindful, most of the water frontage is about 65 to 70 feet per lot. So a 50-foot boat or up to a 50-foot boat will fit nicely. Anything over that, that would be the cons. So the pro is living on the water, having your boat in your backyard, all that. Con side of that is the maximum boat size would be about 50 feet. The other pro about living over here at Citrus Isles is the proximity to downtown and all the highways and the airport and the seaport. I mean, it is in the hub of all of it. And the other pro is that it's got a quiet residential feel. So those are two things that kind of dovetail. You've got the quiet residential feel, also close to the urban energy of downtown and super close to the airport. The other good thing about Citrus Isles is the investment potential. It's always been a great place to invest because of the water. I mean, they ain't making any more water babies, so they're constantly moving. When I drive down the streets, I see at least 2 to 4 properties for sale on each aisle. That's a pretty good inventory turnover for Fort Lauderdale. And then the other is that if you're active, you ride bikes, jet skis, or sea-doos, or any of that. If you have an active lifestyle, if you like to run, then this is an area that is conducive to an active lifestyle. Nice wide streets, really safe on the water. Once you get out a little bit, there's little canals and waterways to do your kayaking and various other water sports. Now, the cons of living here in Citrus Isles, beyond having a maximum boat capacity of 50 feet, is flood risks. So when you're looking at houses, look at the back and see how the house is built. If the house is built up high and you've got this wall between the dock and where the house is, it's kind of filled in, and then they have retaining walls, that's the best construction. Very similar to the Florida Keys. We're used to rising waters here, and that's the best construction to do it. If you see a house that's lying low on the same level as the dock, or even sometimes lower, you think twice. You know that you're going to have flood insurance, and you might even be at risk of flooding as sea levels rise, king tides come in, and all of that. So the construction is very important, because even if you have flood insurance and it's covered, it ain't all covered, and you just don't want to live through having a flooded house. It's just from rising waters. It's not like rivers that overflow like in the Midwest, these horrible things we're seeing. The other part about, the negative about Citrus Isles is it's still a lot of older homes left. So if you're looking in that maybe $800 to $1.2 million price point, you're going to get an older home. It's going to need to be renovated or torn down. And if you want one that's already done, well, that's going to run you between $2 million and $4 million. So that's the truth on Citrus Isles. And the other thing there is that there are only so many aisles, so there's a limited inventory. But the inventory lately has been moving as long as you're good with those price points. So that's all I have for you today from this park and from Citrus Isles. So I thank you for joining me on this neighborhood tour of Citrus Isles. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button on this video, share the video if you know anyone looking for waterfront property close to downtown Fort Lauderdale, and subscribe, like, all the things. Hit me up on the comments if you have any comments or any questions. And thanks again for joining me. Have a fabulous day. Look forward to seeing you on the next video, and peace.